So one of the questions of the day is, can you get the same infection twice? Can you get COVID-19 twice? Until we know more, the answer is we don't know enough. There is a report just recently out that a relatively young person who was diagnosed with COVID-19 and recovered has now gotten COVID-19 again. Well, if that's true, who's hospitable and susceptible, and what do we do about it in regard to their vitamin D and their zinc, their polyphenolics, like quercetin dihydrate, that is a zinc ionophore, and ascorbate and other antioxidants and other essentials, as described in our downloadable free ebook on risk reduction, what you can do to reduce risk and to avoid catastrophe. And the other issue of the day is that people who are recovered, people who have gotten over their COVID-19, very often have lingering fatigue, irritability, sleep disturbances, and other signs of continuing chronic scurvy and metabolic acidosis. So scurvy, which we think of in terms of limes and the British Navy in the 18th century, and by the way, it was 40 years after the physician who proved that citrus, when you fed some citrus to sailors, their teeth didn't fall out. They didn't get scurvy. They didn't go crazy as much when they had some limes, which is why they were called limeys at one point. Bottom line, given that most of the discussion is about the infectious external agent and not the mucosal hospitality or the individual host hospitality, it's not surprising, but it is a bit distressing that almost no discussion has been about how to rehabilitate people who started out low in antioxidants and buffering minerals like magnesium, how to restore their magnesium choline citrate, their ascorbate based on the C cleanse, polyphenolics and zinc, and related. So we do have a lot of information, a lot of evidence, a lot of science that doesn't seem to get through the filter. Because the filter is mostly that we're looking for the external, what I would call dark stranger in the middle of the night, you know, the agent that we can't see. It's really very tiny. In hospitable people, it can really cause devastating consequences. But we don't think anybody should be hospitable. We don't think anybody should be susceptible. I was on a panel last night where one of the presenters pointed out that at least 94% of the people who have catastrophes have one or more, usually multiple, comorbidities. And actually, it's, if you look very carefully, it's pretty close to 100%. We talk about young people who do come down with COVID, some of whom have terrible consequences, but you'd be surprised how many sedentary, hypertensive, pre-diabetic, overweight young people there are today. So we need to look at the comorbidities and help people get over them because they're lifestyle related. But more importantly, we need to look at the simple things like vitamin D for everyone, vitamin C for everyone, magnesium choline citrate for everyone based on that morning urine pH. And yes, we need prebiotics and probiotics, which are now being called synbiotics, not to be confused with symbiotics. Synbiotics are the combination of prebiotics and probiotics. Why we need an extra word for that, I don't know, but the company called Danone wants you to know that word. Symbiotics is the recycled glutamine that is the third part of restoring healthy digestion. So here we are in the midst of a pandemic, looking for solutions very often magic bullet solutions. Expensive, may be effective, although we're not so sure about both the safety and the efficacy yet of many of these magic bullets. You may have noticed that one of the largest vaccine trials in the world was just stopped because of unexpected adverse events. And I can tell you from personal experience, you do not stop a clinical trial over a hiccup or a headache. Something happened. We don't yet know. The Data Safety Management Board of that study is reviewing the event. But in the meantime, out of an excess of caution, they stopped the trial. And their vaccine is very similar to other vaccines. So don't be surprised if other vaccine trials are also put on hold. Now, they may get taken off hold after the Data Safety Management Board looks. But the whisper, what we hear through the grapevine, is that this was not a small event and it was not one person. So what do we do? Well, read the ebook on risk reduction, follow the lifestyle guidance, and convert yourself from problematic to non-problematic. Brian, was that clear?
Yes. How does Regeneron work?
Yes. The Regeneron cocktail, as it's called, is a very high-tech monoclonal synthesis of specific antibodies targeted at COVID-19. How do they do that? Well, first you have to know the sequence of COVID-19. Then you have to make the template from which you're going to make the antibody. Now, to my dismay, they chose the coat, the spike, the outside protein against which they're making antibodies. As with every virus, including coronaviruses like COVID-19, the coat or spike protein is unimportant. What is important is the core, is the RNA, is the genetic material. Hopefully, people will develop T-cell tests. Hopefully, we will get safer vaccines at some point in time based on the core and not on the coat. Because it's very clear that many people will make 100 or 1,000 copies of the coat that has no infectious meaning. It's actually protective for them. But they're not copying the core. They're not infected, but they are making copies of the coat. This is exactly what we learned about hepatitis. And by the way, Harvey Alter received and deserves the Nobel Prize this year for his work on hepatitis C. And I'm a co-author with Harvey in the 70s on this whole subject of how do you diagnose and how do you manage and how do you safely treat hepatitis with lifestyle more than with magic bullets. So the Regeneron cocktail is monoclonal, it's synthetic, it is directed against the surface antigen of COVID-19. And my understanding is it's $1,500 per dose.
Wow.
If you buy it in volume. The United States government just bought 300,000 doses at a cost of $450 million, which is $1,500 apiece.
Wow.
Wow. If you could have that business, you wouldn't give it up easily. Len Schleifer, who is an MD, PhD, founder, chairman, and CEO of Regeneron, was very strategic. He got flash information to the White House doctors who decided that because of the president, this was going to be given. And did you notice they put the president on dexamethasone the next day? The next day, that's a little early. The next day, they were worried about an autoimmune reaction.
Oh, wow.
Aha! You can call this what it is, a monoclonal antibody, but is it yours or is it foreign? It is foreign. What do you mean? It's not mine. It's foreign. Anything that's not me is foreign. That's the definition of the immune defense and repair system, as defined 200 years ago, and that definition hasn't changed. So, yes, the Regeneron cocktail has a place in the management of people on the edge of catastrophe. Where they really are targeting this therapy is the people who were breathing okay half an hour or an hour ago and are now in acute respiratory distress and could tumble into the catastrophes that we've heard about. That would be an interesting test. That would be an interesting place to put that material. And I predict some people will do very well and some people will do very badly.
Okay, good.
But we know everybody needs vitamin D more than they're getting zinc, more than they're getting magnesium choline citrate, more than they're getting ascorbate polyphenolics, more than they're getting EPA, DHA, more than they're getting. Not too long ago, I think there was a legitimate, quote, debate. How much of this or that do you need? What is the best range for vitamin D or hemoglobin A1C or HSCRP? We now know. Not an opinion. This is evidence and fact. It's a paradigm shift. It's a complete game changer, but it allows us to now see through the glass clearly, not darkly. And what are we going to do about that? Well, you first have to get consumers championing the need for this kind of program every 6 months until you're well. And well is defined as the 4 self-assessments and the 8 predictive biomarkers are all within their healthy ranges. It can be done. You can start at 80, and by the time you're 85, you could be functioning like a 40-year-old.
And any just going off the side just a tiny bit, is there any way, have you run into any ideas on how to get any policymakers to buy into the program?
Well, no, I get this call regularly. People call me up and say, Tony Fauci, why don't you get Tony to be an advocate for this program? Yes, I do know Tony, and I know how to talk to him. It's 7:30 in the morning. He's the first one in. There's a brief window before his secretaries get in where you can actually have him pick up the phone. I think that he does clearly now say that he takes a gram of vitamin C, and he has been for a long time, that he takes some vitamin D, don't ask, that he used to run and he now walks. He's physically fit. He's lean. He's Tony Fauci. If you want him to be an orangutan tamer, or if you want him to be a biochemist and metabolism expert, you're looking at another lifetime. He came to NIH in 68. I arrived not too long after. We came up the ranks together. He is an eminent virologist who knows about vaccines. Stop. That's a full-time job. And I'm pretty sure this is right. He's 79 going on 80. He's not going to change his style or his philosophy just because the evidence for years and years and years has been different. In this administration, the entire objective is to stop talking about the virus. Don't ask, don't tell, don't test. Can't we just go on to some other subject? Don Berwick, on our side. Elliot Fisher, on our side. There are people at the highest level who understand that sick care is going to break the bank and too ill itself to function, that we need accountable care organizations. We need the triple aim of better health, better care, and lower cost. But we also need to get back to physiology before pharmacology, and that means changing the curriculum of MD, DO, DC, ND. All of the schools teach a very reductionist model of the human body for a variety of reasons. But having been on curricular committees, I can tell you they barely meet, let alone make decisions that have implications without 16 reviews and 47 pauses. In fact, right now, there's a very rising trend. There is a rising trend of making medical education 3 years because basic science can be covered in college. Really? Not that I know of, but that's the cost. The cost is driving the change. And there are many senior people who are on the train of it takes too long and it's too expensive and doctors have too much debt when they come out of school. Let's do it in 3 years, not 4 years. And of course, in that world, everything is virtual. You never touch a real human being. You occasionally have a demonstration by actors who portray certain conditions on stage, but bedside, you don't sit on the bedside. That's what young doctors tell me. They go through virtual simulations and they don't touch the patient at all. I think that's a loss for everyone. I really do. But it's the direction we're going. It's the logical extension of the recent past where we weren't very good on hygiene. We used to cough on people. Semmelweis pointed out in the 19th century that puerperal sepsis, women who died after childbirth, it was because the doctors transmitted the infection. The Medical Society of Vienna didn't like him. When truth speaks to power, it's very rare for the other side to say, oh gosh, you're right. Gee, thanks for coming by. But, you know, I can tell you the people that we talk to who are absolutely advocates for this, including the fellow who was the Surgeon General of the Joint Chiefs, full professor at the military medical school, senior people at NIH with whom I've been in touch for many, many years. There are very few scientists who are asked on camera or in front of a microphone anything, and fewer yet who can actually speak articulately and get a message across with a gaggle of people flashing, you know, lights and pictures and cameras and videos and microphones and who knows what. Tony Fauci is very used to it. Francis Collins, his boss, who, by the way, was very quiet for a while. And then there was a certain amount of, who is this guy Tony Fauci that came out of downtown Washington? And Francis Collins, fortunately, brilliantly, succinctly got up and said, Tony Fauci is Tony Fauci, and he will never be anyone else but Tony Fauci, and you can listen to him more than anyone else. Well, did you see the news story that somehow Tony Fauci, either his picture or a statement was included in a campaign ad that from his point of view quoted him out of context, and he has asked them to take it down? Really? An NIH scientist is quoted out of context and that gets put up online and then maybe will get taken down? The apology after the error is never recognized. What people remember is the headline. Yeah. Okay. So we do our best to show the evidence that the people who follow this approach are thriving, are doing very well. No catastrophes reported in many tens of thousands of cases that have been casually, anecdotally followed. And then there's the medium.com articles by Eric Rasmussen and Amory Lovins that point out what we said in our downloadable ebook. And they fortunately were enthusiastic about it. It is interesting to me, at least, that 4 different journals said that publishing an article about the benefit of oral vitamin C in viral risk reduction in improving secretory IgA on the mucosa was not interesting. Really? What do you have that's going to protect people from COVID-19? They're, the bodies are piling up in the streets, from what I hear. Not on my street, but on some streets. It's a really good question about why don't the very, very, very smart people at the top of NIH and other policy agencies, why don't they make the transition to functional, to comprehensive, to integrative science? You've heard me say before, it's hardening of the categories. Once you're a world policy expert, it's really hard to say, oops, I made an intellectual mistake. I really have to go back and rethink this whole issue. I can tell you that at the start of COVID-19, I got to talk to a guy who had run CDC under President Obama. And I said, tell me the policy people that we should be talking to, because host has been, the individual, the host, the person, the hospitality has been overlooked. He said, oh, good point. Then he says, well, sorry, all of the policy people from CDC in Atlanta have been pulled up into HHS under Azar, under the new administration, and have not been heard from in a long time. What do you mean they haven't been heard from? They're human beings. They're breathing. You can't talk. No, they're in a bubble. They're in this bubble called the Preparedness Task Force. Is that what it's called? There is a task force under Vice President Pence, and they're in that bubble. And they asked Tony Fauci, who's part of that task force, and he said it's exhausting. Now, Tony knows exactly what he's saying and the meaning of what he's saying. You're briefing the president of the United States. When the discussions of that task force are exhausting, it tells you something about the leader of the task force in a very clear, to me, very clear, but subtle way. Well, he's known to be Tony Fauci. What's he going to say, that Vice President Pence doesn't know his elbow from a hole in the ground about pandemics? But he can say that it's exhausting to talk to people who are like pouring water on sand or are impervious to facts. Now, good hygiene, go argue about, it's not a political statement. We should all wash our hands and probably not cough on each other. And yes, I should learn to cough into my elbow, not, into my hand. Good hygiene is a really good idea. Masks, very complicated. Sorry, there's no simple answer on the mask question. The N95 and better masks, which I do have and I wear in public to be compliant with social guidelines. It's not that comfortable to breathe in a mask that is N95 or better, and therefore does what you want it to do, which is prevent someone else's little droplets from getting to you, or your droplets from getting to them. So you would think the answer is everybody gets an N95 mask and washes it every day, because there are some that can be reused. Go find them. They're back ordered by the bazillion, here and there and everywhere. And people are putting on bandanas. They're putting on, you can see online how to take 3 pieces of cotton or 4 pieces of paper and make your own mask. Oh, please. Oh, please. Except, that the old paraphrase or the old metaphor is, in the land of the blind, a one-eyed person can become king.
All right, I got a change of subject, if I may.
Of course.
Fish oil.
Yes.
Is there a, dumb question time, is there an allowable, expectable amount of PCBs? I'm reading off a piece of paper here.
Right.
PCB and benzylpyrene.
So there's a bunch of bad things that are in fish oil until you distill it under nitrogen.
So if it's there, even in the tiniest amount, that means they did not distill it under nitrogen.
Well, what does tiny mean in regard to a molecule that at parts per million or even parts per billion level will kill you?
Yeah, 0.55, 0.5, 0.
What? Is it parts per million or parts per billion?
They're not saying.
Aha! Aha! Very often you see a number and you're supposed to understand the number and you say, well, what is the measure? You know, what is the unit that this, oh, that's a secret, or we forgot to tell you, or they didn't know themselves that if you don't tell me that, I don't know. The answer is it shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
I can tell you that for ours, and for years we have done this. When you distill under nitrogen and you micelize the way we do in the PERC EPA DHA guide, you have undetectable hormone disrupting PCBs, PBBs, BSA. No, sorry. You've got POFA. We have none of that. You've got glyphosate. We have none of that. And you can go on and on about things that are in and measured that should be absent from a healthier fish oil. So if you can measure any of that hormone disrupting forever molecule population, the POPs, the persisting organic pollutants, or the solvent residues, it's not distilled under nitrogen. Because the reason that we go to the trouble, and pharmaceutical companies have followed on what we have done for years. When you distill under nitrogen, you get the good and you avoid the bad on both sides.
Yeah, we ran into a problem when we did the allergy test and people were allergic to the vegetable glycerin. Then we were looking for an oil. So this company was with a smile here. They were like, oh, we'll send you our sales sheet, essentially their monograph on why their oil is so stupendous, and they just flat out put it in here, all the stuff that's in it, and it was just they're not even hiding that it's not clean.
No, you see, there's two parts. You're correct on both sides. On the one hand, someone probably from the legal department forced them to put that information down, but in a way that if you don't understand it, you might think it's okay.
Yeah. Can you say, or if when we run into, hey, the vegetable glycerin allergy, is there a company to look to for omega-3 oils? And if now's not the time.
No. This is a very good question. I'll think about the answer. You probably cannot do a proper soft gel without some vegetable glycerin.
Yeah, this was a liquid on a teaspoon.
No, I understand. And that Barry Sears, who I respect in regard to his knowledge of fats and omega-3s, is now recommending 15 grams a day.
Wow.
15,000 milligrams a day. And you get it in a bottle and you put it on a spoon. And it tastes, shall I say, sharp.
Yes.
And I like him. I think his science is excellent. I said, well, why don't you protect it some way? He said, oh, that would cost too much. Okay, so now I can take something on a spoon that makes me kind of almost retch, but I'm getting 15 grams of something because it's 15 grams of something. But honestly, once you expose those delicate omega-3 or omega-6 fats to oxygen and air, they'll go rancid very quickly. So let me think about how to get something that will be taken up, but it's not a soft gel. It doesn't have the vegetable glycerin.
Okay.
How often do you see that? Because that shouldn't come up very often.
Not very often, but I do the omega-3 and the omega-6 with every allergy test.
Mm.
And so it's one in every 25 tests, maybe.
Okay, no, that's enough. That's enough to be significant. That's enough to be significant. By chance, have you spoken with Bill Harris at the omega-3 lab?
No, no.
Call him up. Tell him I said to call
Okay.
him. Ask him, because he might have something constructive to suggest.
All right.
What I have said to people at times is that they buy the smallest possible bottle, they keep it in the refrigerator, they open it for as short a time as possible, and they more or less swig it. They don't even pour it on a spoon. Why? Trust me, if you looked at the surface of that spoon, it wouldn't be pure.
Okay. Interesting you say that, because this particular company, it doesn't matter, but it's a very small bottle.
Oh, well, that's good. So at least they're acknowledging that once you open a bottle and air gets in, the longer that stays a bottle, the worser for the contents. And what I'm thinking, although I don't know if anyone has done this yet, I can imagine something that basically you would kind of tear off the corner of and then express the liquid into your mouth, like under your tongue. And it would have the EPA DHA, but no vegetable glycerin. So let me think on that. Get me any more information you can about this company. And my suggestion is call Bill Harris, see if he has any suggestions, and we'll work on it together.
Okay, good. By chance, did you see that my little clip on the omega-3 oils?
Oh, I did. I like them. They're getting better and better.
Good, good.
And I'll bet they pull. I'll bet folks respond. It's just right. It's friendly. It's clear. It's not too much. It's not too little. And it's news they need. And it's got a call to action.
And that seems to draw better than the wordy stuff.
No, I agree with that too. I liked the stuff you started with, what I would call the wordier stuff, because I think you and your wife worked on those together. But I agree. There's a reason why talkies replaced silent. Is there a reason why color replaced black and white? I was about the last person in the computer world because I had high grayscale monitors for many, many years, and I didn't want to give them up.
Yeah.
And eventually I had to. So I think we're all learning. I think we're all learning about the individuality. I think we're all learning about how to do this stuff right. As I'm talking to you, I'm trying to think, could I recommend certain kinds of wild caught fish where you eat the collar? Do you know what's called the collar of a fish? Okay, it's the fattiest part of the fish. Very few restaurants serve it, but on occasion I have had it. And it's really very good. And I know from other literature that it's omega-3 rich. Could you get enough by every other day having a healthy fish? Now, first of all, you got to get a healthy fish.
Yeah.
First of all, you got to get a healthy fish. Never been frozen. Eyes are still clear. Line caught. Okay. But possible. There are places that do wild catch of salmon. And if it's a healthy salmon, there's a fair amount of fat in the salmon. So let me think about that side too. Is there a dietary option that people could actually implement? Because if you tell me it's $400 an ounce, I'm telling you not many people are going to do it.
Yeah.
But I have had some flash frozen, quote, fresh salmon that at least tasted to me fresh. And I will tell you that when the kids were of a certain age, we went up to Alaska. We were supposed to do all 5 climatic zones. We got to 4 of the 5. But in one of them, this was where we were watching glaciers calve. It was also spawning time. If you just threw a line in the water, a fish, would be on it. Well, needless to say, the kids were thrilled. They caught dinner. The guy on the boat made dinner. It was a whole, experience. So let me think on both sides of that. And if you can, get me some information so that I can
I'll send you the thing on it. Yeah.
Good morning.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
Good.
Any questions?
I do have some questions for you. I guess the first one is it's a pretty simple question regarding repair guard and pain guard, about the mouthfeel of it. I noticed that sometimes there's tingling on the tongue, and almost some numbness. Would that be quercetin dihydrate?
Well, you start out with the fact that these are easily crushable, and by design, because there are people who, for a variety of reasons, want to crush them up and put them in applesauce or yogurt or sweet potato or something, cashew butter, and so they're designed for that, which means essentially no coating. We're a full disclosure company. Everything in those products is on the label. So yes, what you are experiencing is the taste sensation of quercetin dihydrate and or soluble OPC, probably mostly the quercetin dihydrate, indicating that you need it. What we occasionally hear from people is if they keep the repair guard in their mouth and don't just swallow it right away, that it begins to come apart. It begins to get a little rough on the edges. It does. It's meant to be swallowed or crushed. So let's say that someone gets a tingle. That's an indication that you need polyphenolics.
It's interesting. It's almost like the tingle that you can get from like a really high quality echinacea.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And
yeah.
and remember that quercetin dihydrate is a zinc ionophore, as is echinacea. Now, echinacea has sesquiterpenes that very specifically are known to tingle. I'll check. I can tell you that quercetin dihydrate is a polyphenolic, but it's not a sesquiterpene. Is it a cousin of? Might it ring some of those receptor responses? Maybe. That I can check and get back to you.
Interesting. So I would say on the repair guard and pain guard also. So I've had a customer recently, say that they're having a hard time with the price of the product. They really like the product, but the price of the product. And so I'm, gathering up information to present to them about the reasons why this is the highest quality quercetin product on the market, right?
Not only that, ask Melissa Jaffe, ask someone to send you the comparison we did many years ago, because ours is bioavailable. When you compare quercetin with quercetin dihydrate, it's like you're comparing unripe bananas with nectarines. The reason that we chose quercetin dihydrate, the reason that we chose the soluble OPC was very specific after looking at hundreds, maybe thousands of these polyphenolics, flavonoids and flavanols, etc. Quercetin itself is so poorly available in terms of biology, its bioavailability is so low, that if you give as much as we would recommend of the quercetin dihydrate, etc., you're getting near teratogenic or mutagenic ranges. Don't do that. Never been shown for quercetin dihydrate, never been shown for soluble OPC. The feedback we get is either, oh my God, can I still get this? Because it works. But we also get the second response. I can go and buy a product called quercetin. I can go and buy a product called polyphenolics polyana at here, there, and everywhere, and online for 20% off and free shipping. And at that point, I think you have to say, except those products are known to be teratogenic, mutagenic. Their toxicology profile is nowhere near as safe nor as effective as quercetin dihydrate and soluble OPC. And yes, we understand that if you want a quality ingredient to get from the source to the person, you have to be meticulous and unbending in your intent that nobody's going to mess with it. Because when you deal with things like quercetin dihydrate and soluble OPC that are in very short supply, go try and buy them on the open market. You won't be able to. We have long-standing relationships with source. We're more or less vertically and horizontally integrated. We provide the highest value at the lowest possible price. And we would love to give it away. But we're not John Bears for Tipton. If you give me $1 bazillion, I'll give it away. So I think we have to point out to people that it's the value, not the price, that you have to look at. If you want to look at safety, efficacy, if you want to look at decades of, rave reviews, and I don't know if you know this, but Amory Lovins, my dear friend, for many, many years, has carried with him extra bottles of Repair Guard and given them out hither, thither, and yon to people whose names you would know or faces you would know, with great success. I'll tell you a quick personal anecdote. I have friends named Norbert and Gabriella, and their job at the time was running the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Washington, D.C. And their dear friend was flying in because the next night she was supposed to give a big presentation. So a half a dozen of us have lunch at the Hay Adams in Washington, a very nice place for lunch. And I can see that her face is a little puffy, that her breathing, is a little bit less than calm, that her sinuses are giving her a headache. So I take out of my pocket samples of Repair Guard, and I offer them to her. Now, I have just met this woman. She doesn't know who I really am, except I'm there because of Norbert and Gabriella, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting next to her. Norbert just goes like this. She takes 2. 15 minutes later, I give her 2. 15 minutes later, I give her 2. She goes, I can breathe, to the whole, assembled multitude. I do appreciate the issue. These are not reimbursable items. They're over the counter. They're elective, but they're protective. And I do think you have to communicate with the people who want value, safety, and results, because there are the people, and I respect this point of view. They'd like everything for nothing and free shipping. And I can respect that. But I do think that we, over the years, have pointed out the science and the evidence about safer ingredients put together in ways that are more bioavailable and functional. And we put this into test in community-based outcome studies. Who else does that? So I do appreciate the question, and I'm sure you're going to get it. But I think the answer is you just quietly say, we offer value, safety, and results. If you want to go with a low bid provider, that's your choice.
Yes, I love Repair Guard and Pain Guard, and I appreciated what you talked about on I think it was the last Ask Dr. Jaffe about orangutans injuring themselves
Yes.
and
Isn't
eating
that
the
a hoot?
leaves and taking it in handfuls and take it like food. And so I find that helpful when talking to my patients about the use of Repair Guard and how to actually dose themselves.
Send me an email and I'll send you some pictures of the orangutans. But yes, if an orangutan injures themselves, they go up to the top of the canopy, they pull the little green shoots, and they have 10, 20, 30 grams a day of quercetin dihydrate. Mm-hmm. And there's the story, and I think you know this story, but anyway, we're visiting Willie Smits, the guy who saves orangutans in Indonesia and Balikpapan, anywhere way out in the wilderness. And there's a dentist and his wife who are present. And there's a male orangutan that has a hot tooth. And the dentist says, hey, anesthetize the animal. I can pull the tooth, which he does. The animal comes out of anesthesia and he's not feeling very well. And so I think it was my son, but someone said, well, Russ, get some Repair Guard. And so I did. I got some Repair Guard, and the vet, this woman vet, initially dipped the Repair Guard in lactose because orangutans like milk sugar. So she gets the orangutan to swallow the first two, and she comes back 15 minutes later with the next dose, and the orangutan reaches out of the cage and takes them out of her hand and eats them. Wow. Aha. That was, to me, a wonderful demonstration of evidence in action, okay. Because I'll tell you, you can't fool an orangutan. And then the same visit, it wasn't the same animal, but the next day or maybe 2 days later, the vet says to me, would you like to come up close to some of these animals? Now, these are animals in cages, and they're in cages because they either have hepatitis or tuberculosis. That's why they're in cages. Because if they were in the wild, they would spread the infection. So we go, and this male, 350-pound or so male, reaches out of the cage and takes my forearm and holds it. And every time I started to pull away, he grabbed. And every time I relaxed, he began to let go until I started to pull away, and then he grabbed. And the vet goes and gets a big dowel, a big wooden dowel, and she's going to hit the orangutan on the shoulder so he'll let me go. And I said, he's just playing. Leave him alone. She says, aren't you afraid? I said, he's not menacing me. He's not hurting me. He's just in charge, which he was. And after a certain period of time, he got interested in a banana or something, and he went away. And she said, have you ever done that before? I said, no. All I knew was you were here, and the animal was in the cage, and what am I going to do except surrender? So sometimes you just show up and have a good time.
So I have another question regarding some patients.
Sure.
So I have 2 patients who one of their major chief complaints was allergies, basically. So and they manifested in different ways in both of these patients. So both of them did the LRA test and did a really excellent. These are dedicated patients. Did an excellent job of eliminating the reactive items, and also followed a lot of recommendations, whether it was supplementation or doing the sea cleanse, or better dietary choices. So
okay.
Both of them, their allergy symptoms reduced significantly within the first 1 to 2 months of elimination. And then one of them said, she had about 3 months of improvement, and then they came back. And she hasn't added anything back in yet.
Oh, no, keep going. I think I can explain what's happening. But what else did she say?
So nothing back in yet, but her other symptoms. So, I've known her for like 10 years, and her anxiety symptoms have reduced significantly. Her sleep's better, her energy's better. I would say that her focus is better. She's 62. But the kind of the chronic congestion and the little bit of this kind of cough and kind of post-nasal drip is coming back. So I don't know for sure if this is seasonal, because she does have seasonal allergies, but it was interesting to see this big drop.
Yeah. She's what's called atopic. So she's the kind of person who is allergically disposed.
Yes, definitely.
That to me means both type 1 and delayed.
Yes.
And what you're saying is, what I'm hearing, I think, is that we didn't restore her digestion so that she's now developed new sensitivities, but immediate ones. Her IgE and IgG4 are out of balance and have long been out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
We know about IgE in terms of type 1, but when IgE goes up and IgG4 goes up at the same time, there's no symptoms. It's the people where the IgE goes up and the IgG4 does not go up. They're the ones who get just what you described, because what you're describing is an aspect of type 1, not of delayed allergy. So we come in with the LRA test and program, we improve things. However, the day she started, and even a month or two into a diligent application of the program, does not correct the years of underlying maldigestion, dysbiosis, leakiness in the intestines, enteropathy, lack of stomach acid, anxiety, sleep, etc. But from what you said, she is diligent. She is willing to put in effort and perspiration as long as she's properly guided. And she's not looking for instant miracles. She's been at this a while, but she's willing to persevere, all of which I agree with, as good signs. So what I'm saying is, I think we need to give her cromolyn gallate. Do you know what cromolyn is?
No.
No.
Oh,
I mean, I've definitely heard of chromalin sodium, but not.
Well, chromium sodium is okay, but chromium, this is a very specific molecule that decreases the uptake of immediate hypersensitivity molecules, and it reduces the responsiveness of type 1 allergic cells. So we say they're histaminic, but there's a lot more going on than just the histamine. Mm-hmm. And yes, I think part of her issue is that her histidine, the source of her stomach acid, is being pulled to histamine, especially at this time of year. So I would give her histidine, 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams, half an hour before meals, the free amino acid. And I would consider something that would decrease her disposition to these IgE exaggerated responses.
Okay, so I think I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. No, this is an old-fashioned medicine. It had a vogue, if I remember, it had a vogue maybe in the 80s into the 90s, but nobody really made a lot of money off of it. It just helped people. And it's quite inert in contrast to a lot of other things that I don't think are so inert.
Cromolyn and what, not cromolyn sodium, what form are you?
Well, I prefer the gallate. It has better. Yeah, I prefer that if it's available. I know it's available in Europe. It may or may not be available here.
So the histamine that's made in the gut from the food, you're preventing that by taking it before meals. And so that could, so even if the issue isn't, if the root cause of the issue isn't at the gut for the allergies, so say,
Well, no. See,
inhaling an allergy versus
no.
eating a food.
What I would say is the following: if if you're atopic, if you're an allergic kind of person like her, almost by definition, you have low histidine in your plasma, and you have too much histamine sensitizing your granulocytes.
Mhm.
When you give the histidine free form amino acid half an hour before meal, you get the stomach acid production. And yes, some of that histidine is going to go to histamine, but you can still provide a safer therapeutic option to improve her stomach acid. Because if we improve her stomach acid, then we're going to improve B complex uptake and magnesium choline citrate uptake, and everything else we're doing is going to get better if we can improve stomach digestive function.
So you're saying the chromalin gallate can improve
Well, no, I'm saying
hydrochloric acid production?
the histidine will give you better stomach acid production for sure, without
Oh, the
question.
histidine.
But then, yeah, the histidine, the L-histidine amino acid free form, which is available, whatever brand you get, it all comes from the same source. So you want to give 500 to 1,000 milligrams of the L-histidine free form amino acid 30 minutes before meals, and then consider the sodium, whatever's available.
Right. Okay. That sounds good.
Now
that makes sense.
If I remember, there was an aerosol version of this, and she might benefit from breathing it in rather than swallowing it.
Yeah. And I would say the other patient that I'm referring to, she kind of the same thing. She's like 8 months out. She had an episode 3 months out, and then again at 8 months, where her primary symptom of basically it's hives, but her skin dries and basically peels off. Her ears itch. She's getting all those symptoms again. But she's lost 36 pounds and she's not going to get it back, and her energy is amazing. She's 72 years old, so many other benefits, but this allergy aspect is coming up, and I'm currently experiencing the same thing. And so I'm wondering what's kind of going on, why, it's probably at the gut is where I'm expecting all three of us.
That's
always, what is going on.
It's always got related. But the first thing I would suggest is a salt and soda bath, including a teaspoon or even a tablespoon of sesame oil.
Okay.
Because when you say dry skin, what I think is not enough essential omega-3 so that the oily sweat isn't happening, the skin is drying. You use soap, you use things to clean your skin. That strips certain things off. A healthy person will produce a certain amount of oils in response to that because they have enough reserve of essential oils. Some of us don't. So if you start with dry skin, once you get to itching, that's because there's enough desquamated cells that some epiphyte is eating it. And if you look with a scanning electron micrograph or something like that, you'd see it. You don't want that. This is in the continuum of type 1. It's not the typical type 2, 3, 4 that we deal with. No, this is modified type 1.
Yes. So it's interesting with that patient, I could smell her breath. So when she definitely I kept thinking low hydrochloric acid is what was going on for her. And now I'm thinking this whole, you basically, for me, you really nailed it talking about the histidine and the histamine.
Yes.
I was really the direction of thinking that I'm saying take apple cider vinegar also before meals.
Apple
is what I
cider
was
vinegar,
recommending.
absolutely, absolutely. A capful or a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in almost anything you eat is good for you. That's what Bhante the monk taught me.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, on all accounts, and the skin is much more than a wrapper. It's the largest organ of your body. It's an accessory organ of excretion. When the kidney, spleen, and liver, when the colon and the lungs are not able to complete the job, the skin is responsible for getting rid of what's left. And it very often dries and irritates the skin. So what you have to do is think about biological detox. The sea cleanse, of course, but garlic, ginger, onions, brassica, sprouts, and eggs as staples.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that you folks are in the Oregon, Portland area, as you know, the air quality is not exactly optimum. And it's not just the effects of breathing those particulates in the air, it's the effect of those particulates on your skin. You know, the skin's an amazing organ. It doesn't talk much, but it shows a lot. It is one of the windows on the body. You want it to be happy. You want it to be robust, repairing. You do not want it to be disposed towards hives or itching. And I think that what you're seeing is a very common situation today where it's a combination of everything. So it's digestive issues, biological detoxification issues, it's eating the right foods, but also getting enough nutrient density, it's knowing how to breathe and including restorative sleep. And it's a symphony, it's a tapestry, it's an opera.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people can understand something along those lines as a metaphor, as an example, that says, oh, we're not going to fight with some organism topically that might cause itching. We're going to try and get to the causes. And it is a process. It is peeling the onion. It is, we're going to learn along the way how to be well and healthy in the 21st century. It's not easy. It's possible, but it's not easy. And I think these are very good examples of people who, first of all, you must have gotten their trust and confidence and inspired them for them to follow through, because these are programs. These are not once and done kind of, just sprinkle some pixie dust. And I think if they were on the line with us, they would both say, helped, but not well. And stuff is coming up. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why we have these conversations.
Yes, right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jaffe.